welcome everybody to the realities of Google's mobile crackdown, today's webinar, also known as Pop-Up Doomsday. This is Peter Messmer here with AddShoppers, and we are joined by one of our favorite partner companies, Blue Acorn, today, so I'm really looking forward to this. Before I jump into it, a couple housekeeping notes that you've probably heard 1,000 times if you've been on all of our webinars, but here we go. So if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please do not hesitate. Drop your questions into the Q&A box, and we will handle those all at the end. And also, the biggest question that we usually get is, will this webinar be recorded? And if so, when can I expect a recording? And the answer to that is yes, it is recorded, and you can expect it in your inbox sometime tomorrow, probably promptly tomorrow morning. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and I will introduce your presenters, the first of which is speaking now. Again, my name is Peter Messmer. I'm the Director of Growth over here at AddShoppers. I've actually am the first employee with the company, so I've been here a little over 4 years now, which is very exciting. And it's actually, no, make that 5. It's been so long. And yeah, it's been a really fun ride. I work a lot directly with clients, also on the marketing side, a little bit on the sales side as well, so I do a lot of different things within the company. Some of you guys may have spoken with me or worked with me if any of our clients are on the call. And joining me today is Elliot Volkman, who is the Digital Marketing Manager at Blue Acorn. I will let him introduce himself now.
Hey everyone, really excited to be here and discuss this topic. Thank you for that intro as well, Peter. Just a quick one on me. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager over here at Blue Acorn, and we'll kind of dig into what we do in just a moment.
All right, sounds good. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody else is looking forward to it as well. And speaking of looking forward to it, here's the agenda that we'll be covering today. So we're going to start off by recapping the update to the Google's algorithm change that launched on January 10th, also known more affectionately within the AddShoppers community as Pop-Up Doomsday. And then we'll actually show you guys some examples of what's happened. You know, have sites been hit? If so, how drastic has it been? And you know, why were some sites hit and why were some sites not hit? And then we will get into the solutions and best practices for how to make sure you stay safe, and not just this update, but any future updates, because Google is targeting mobile user experience pretty heavily, so you want to stay ahead of the curve on things like that. Lastly, we have a really special exclusive report to offer you guys. And then, as I stated before, we have Q&A at the very end. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and with that, let me go ahead and introduce you guys to AddShoppers if you don't know anything about us yet. So we are the leading on-site marketing platform for commerce. So basically, you know, if you'd like to cut the time down that it takes to launch just about any kind of marketing campaign on your site, you should look at something like AddShoppers. So we can take the process of launching a new campaign on your site from a matter of months to a matter of weeks or even days. So I'm talking about things like referral programs, things like email capture, increasing your conversion rates, abandonment campaigns, and things like that. And that's basically a quick intro to us. You'll see some of our clients at the bottom, and on the left, I would like to call out our 2016 e-commerce benchmark report. We released this a couple months ago. It's basically our platform-wide stats that we saw the entire year of 2015. There's a lot of juicy data in there, like average conversion rates, average order values across e-commerce, things like what kind of conversion rates and click-through rates and cost per click should you expect from Facebook ads, Google shopping ads, and things like that. So AddShoppers.com/2016, if you want to check that out, is free, not even an email address to fill out. So that is a little bit about us, and now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elliot to intro you guys to Blue Acorn and start off the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And I can attest to the reports that AddShoppers produces. In fact, it's something that we typically look forward to greatly and get a lot of insight out of that as well. But let's jump into a little bit about Blue Acorn and what we do. So we're an e-commerce agency. We're based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and we basically solve problems two different ways. Let me just switch over to my screen real quick, and then I'll jump into that. Alrighty, make sure that's working. Okay, so we should be good to go here if it wants to appear. Here it is. All right, sorry about that. Little technical difficulties. So yes, Blue Acorn, we are a e-commerce agency based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and our thing is we solve problems two different ways. So how we do that is basically we go through fundamental and incremental changes that are inspired by your data, customer psychology, and our team's experience to minimize risk. Both are tested thoroughly, held accountable to important KPIs, and looked after by our strategic managers. Most importantly, solutions for both are built around your structure, your constraints, and your goals. We've brought positive change to a number of retailers that include Le Creuset, Rebecca Minkoff, Olympus, Mitchell Gold, Bob Williams, Yeti, and Everlast, just to name a few that you may have heard of. So what I mean by that is either we look at what you have and help you build upon it, or we just kind of gut the system and look at a fundamental shift. So that could be replatforming, rebuilding, redesigning. But that's enough about us. Let's dig into why you're here and get into the good stuff. Before we get into the examples, I do want to look into a little bit of a history as far as what this change is and what it means. And then we'll get into the examples and some of the analysis that we found. So the mobile crackdown, basically Google announced, I think it was August 2016, that they were going to roll out a new algorithm. So basically what that happened is on January 10th, 2017, that rollout began occurring and we started seeing changes to different websites. So ultimately the goal here was a pushback against poorly designed mobile pop-ups and give a mobile indexing full priority on how things rank in search results. So when I say poorly designed, it's in the sense of user experience. If it blocks content but is not a required element such as an age gate, Google has warned us with several months of warning that these sites will or could become penalized. So what is exactly the significance of this change? Before we get exactly into the findings, let's take things way back, way back as far as in the terms of internet time to August 2016. And that's when Google had just announced that they would be making some changes to how search results would work. Again, set for January 10th, as you now know, the new change had two primary factors: the mobile indexing, which previously it involved either a combination of desktop and mobile. It is now solely just mobile. And then, of course, that sites using mobile pop-ups could get penalized. Although brands and retailers had months to plan and anticipate the changes, Google was unspecific in regards to the pop-up portion of the change, which means both AddShoppers and Blue Acorn had to do a bit of digging on our own to try to see if we can get a more definite understanding of who could or would be or is being penalized. So this is what we were presented with when the announcement rolled out in August. As you can see, they're illustrations, not clearly defined examples. And the other component is, what you'll probably notice, there are no open text fields on any of these example pop-ups. As you can see from the examples, they're both descriptively vague, yet visually definitive. On the left, we see a medium-sized pop-up, likely promoting some form of the sale, with a small exit intent to close it. If you look more closely, though, it looks like there is a transparency layer between the content and pop-up, which will also make things more difficult to read. And then moving on, you see in the middle, it's maybe a prompt to get you to download a native app instead of using the mobile website. And on the right, it completely takes over the screen, and it looks like it's promoting some sort of sale, again, with some sort of exit intent as well. To bring things into reality, here are a few of the mobile pop-ups that we found while tracking if sites were being penalized for using them. Hint, one of these has a definitive penalization, but we'll get into that shortly. So who is and who will be impacted? So what are the general themes that we found tied to brands who use mobile pop-ups? It's pretty simple. So the first two are essentially exactly what Google laid out. Brands using large pop-ups that impact a user from seeing content could be penalized, and using invasive pop-ups that are difficult to close on mobile screens could also be penalized. The third is something more along the lines of what we have identified. The other two obviously being what Google has laid out for us. So what most commonly occurred when we were seeing some impact as far as negative flow of traffic to a site is that a pop-up that appears on load, typically for lead capture, and also is medium or larger in size, is the most likely candidate to see some sort of impact. But we'll get into those examples in just a moment. So here are our data verified examples. I do want to set out on the right foot and have a few caveats here. Obviously, this rollout occurred on January 10th or so, which means there was a good 2-week period where Google is actually starting to index these sites. This period of analysis that we conducted was mostly for the months leading up to, so we can get historical data, and then the 30 days or so after it rolled out. So what we see here is a little bit on what I would refer to as preliminary as far as analysis, and we will continue to monitor these and keep everyone updated as far as we see more stronger examples and examples of where there's negative impact. But let's get into the good stuff. So the good, the neutral, and the ugly. The good news, pop-ups can still be used. We'll actually get into some solutions and best practices with Peter in a little bit. But overall, you should not be screaming the sky is falling at this point. Neutral news. Details are still fuzzy on how Google penalizes pop-ups, although we did compare at least 20 different sites that use different pop-ups, and we did a full breakdown of each. The evidence currently is still a little bit hazy as far as what will trigger Google. And there's no saying that Google's not going to change this and get a little bit smarter about what sites could be impacted in the future. The ugly sites are in fact being penalized. One in particular, we'll get into that in just a second. So the good. Let's see. So Smartwall is a former Blue Acorn client, has seen an actual positive impact regardless of their use of a pop-up. The main difference? They don't use a standard approach to mobile pop-ups. Though the pop-up does take up a large portion of the screen, it only appears when you start to scroll down a page. So that's where we identified as part of the theming. It does not appear on load, which could be part of what Google is looking for. It also does not include a field for text entry. So let's look at the data. So just as we're taking a look at this, the lower the number, the better. The higher the number, the lower the traffic rank. What I mean by that is when you're actually looking at Google, obviously the first page results, typically that means you are not only getting the most traffic, but your search ranking results for those are much higher. But as you can see, over the historical period, basically they have the typical promotional period that came through the holidays, which could have anything to do with sales, paid ads, emails, all that fun stuff that occurred during the holidays, which will encourage additional traffic coming to the site. So as you can see from the traffic rank has a huge positive turn leading up to the 2016 holidays, but then plateaued around when the new algorithm hit. Due to the holidays and the level of marketing that occurs during this period, we do not feel that their mobile pop-up had any effect on their brand. And let's get into some neutral examples here. Some sites have not seen any negative impact, or at least not clear negative impact at this time, but are still using mobile pop-ups. Using a lower third banner with lead capture field, Keel's pop-up appears on first load. Being a smaller pop-up, technically it should not be impacted by the algorithm change. Based on Alexa traffic rank, the brand saw a neutral flow as the algorithm rolled out. However, prior to this time, it also saw a large growth period. Due to outside factors, we're hesitant to say the neutral traffic shift was due to the rollout, but it is certainly possible. That is why we'll continue to monitor this and keep people updated. We find that it is more likely due to the post-holiday promotional period, which, post-holidays, there's always a bit of a traffic hangover as paid ads and paid media are reduced. Similar to SmartRule, Keels had a similar traffic pattern leading up to the holidays, but was far more consistent over the past 2.5 months. So again, we don't want to directly tie this to it. There could be potential in the future, but at this time, we're calling this a neutral impact. So Heels, on the other hand, is a little bit more ugly, not in the sense of the pop-up. It's pretty standard as far as those go. After a bit of loading, which also could impact the numbers that we're going to see in a moment, Heels immediately pushes a mobile pop-up that is just below a standard or medium size. Though it has a small X to close, you can also press the outside of the box to dismiss it. Like the others we found who saw an Alexa search decline, this too includes an open field for lead capture. Although Heels uses a pop-up on load, their traffic has been in decline over the past few months, even with the holiday season. We also found that their pop-up did take a bit of time to load, which means that site speed could have a potential component into their declining traffic rank. However, without full insight into their marketing, SEO, and other tactics, it's just interesting to see a ramp down of their traffic ranking as the algorithm rolls out in early January. Still, this particular example isn't incredibly clear as far as penalizations go. That's where we get to the really ugly. Ouch. Besides a bit of formatting issues on the mobile pop-up, MeUndies is our primary example that shows a drop-off in traffic when the new algorithm hit on January 10th. As you can see, they employ a standard medium-sized pop-up that appears on load. I'm not sure if you can see where my mouse is pointed, but you can actually see mid or early January, there's a good little cliff where the traffic jumps off. Based on what we see here, MeUndies did have some traffic declines over the past few months, but the most noticeable cliff dropped right on January 10th or 11th. To us, this is a strong indicator that standard on-load mobile pop-ups are what Google will be and has been penalizing over the past month or so, with pop-ups even larger or more invasive also following into this scope. I should note that although we did track this with Alexa, we also used a few different other search platforms to try to figure out different search rankings, all that fun stuff. Moz in particular only gave us 2 data points. Each of those backed up our positive, neutral, and negative impacts as far as our results go. Just so there's a little bit of data, additional data and information to go along with it. With that said, I'd like to jump into solutions and best practices, and from there, I'd like to hand this off over to Peter.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Elliot. Let me go ahead and get the screen share going, so please bear with me. And all right, we should be back. So let me go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to run through basically, what do you need to know as far as what do you need to do from today moving forward, assuming you haven't really done much to address this issue yet. So some of you guys may be here because you have noticed declines like this, and kind of it's on fire, and this is something you need to put out. Some of you guys may be here more as like a spectator, not really sure if you need to be active, and I'm going to help you figure out exactly how concerned you need to be and how much of a priority it needs to be. So the first thing that I like to do to point this out and help you kind of wrap your head around what exactly do you need to do here and how important is it, is basically to calculate the rough impact that you get from pop-ups. And more specifically, if you want to be super targeted, mobile pop-ups, because these are the ones that are primarily targeted. A, because Google is using the mobile sites for their index now, and B, because that's what they have, at least so far, explicitly said that they're going to be targeting. So what we're going to do is basically calculate how much of your email list growth comes from pop-ups. And the reason that I use email growth is because that's what most marketers use pop-ups for, is to collect emails. Especially pop-ups that come up on entry, which is again, exactly what Google's targeting here. So it's basically 3 quick steps. It's fairly intuitive, so it shouldn't be too hard to understand. But basically, number 1, how many emails do you add on to your list per month on average? Number 2, how many of those come from mobile pop-ups? So if you have this, tagged in Google Analytics or something like that, that's a pretty easy number to pull. If not, you may need to, maybe you're capturing additional, device data in your form fields or something like that. But there's ways to get this data. And then step number 3 is basically divide number 2 by number 1 to figure out, how much of your email list is dependent upon modals. This example, these are all hypothetical numbers, but let's say 50% of your email list is could be wiped out if you can't run pop-ups anymore. And obviously, if you should know the value of an email subscribers, it's not that hard to translate this into a dollar amount. And then obviously, once you run this calculation, you can kind of figure out how much of a priority is this really. How urgently do you need a solution? Obviously, the other piece to the whole solution thing is, well, should I just disable my pop-ups? So this gives you kind of 2 scenarios. Scenario A is just disable pop-ups, and then you'll lose out on whatever number you come up with here. Solution B is to kind of maybe a little bit more risky, but let's just leave everything in place and roll the dice as far as rankings go. And that's a little bit harder to calculate, but obviously there's a lot of risk inherent there, especially if you get a lot of traffic from Google already, and you don't want to jeopardize that. So again, looking at implementing a solution, kind of the issue here that's not necessarily the burning issue right now, but it's always on everybody's mind, is mobile conversion rates. Everybody wants to know, how can I improve my mobile conversion rates? If you look at the table on the right, you've seen these statistics probably 100 times. Smartphones, your desktops convert about 3 times better than smartphones. I don't think you should necessarily be looking to specifically improve your smartphone conversion rate. I would track overall conversion rate. Reason being, a lot of people use smartphones exclusively for browsing and discovering products, but when it comes time to buy, you do that on the desktop. So it's not necessarily, it's not apples to apples. Desktop conversion rate versus smartphones. So that's why you should keep tracking your overall conversion rate. But how do you get more people to find a product they want on your website when they're sitting on their couch watching TV and they just clicked on your Facebook ad? How do you get them to come back on desktop to actually buy? And it's not going to happen by having a poor user experience that drives the customer away because they're frustrated by the pop-up that they just saw. So this is really why usability is so important. This is really the same reason that Google's cracking down on usability, and it's the same reason why we all as marketers should be aligned with making the user experience as good as possible. However, we don't just want to give away everything that we marketers kind of ride on and depend on. So you might have numbers. You may have an email list growth goal that you need to hit. You may have a conversion rate goal that you need to hit. You may have a traffic goal or a search ranking goal or some kind of number that you need to hit. So you can't necessarily just turn off pop-ups, which is going to kill your email, because then you might not hit your goal, and then you might not grow at the level that you need to grow at. So that's why we need a solution that's really the best of both worlds. And again, not just for what's happened in the past, but what may happen in the future as Google keeps rolling this out. There's speculation that they're actually going to make the signal stronger. One of their top search analysts, or I don't remember the exact title, but he took to Twitter and he asked his audience, should this signal be stronger? And just about everybody said yes. So there could be more changes to come. But so here's the solution. As far as AddShoppers terminology goes, here's what we've come up with as the solution. So I'm going to let the little animation on the screen play a couple times. So just watch it and you'll see what happens. So when the page loads, you'll see the little, it says offers just for you, pulls up from the bottom of the screen so you can see what's down there. And then it minimizes automatically down to a little notification bar at the bottom. So this is important because it's not an intrusive interstitial, which is Google's terminology for things that they're going to penalize. So it doesn't cover up any content, automatically that you have to manually dismiss. It's going to go away on its own, so users don't get frustrated because there's a pop-up in the way of whatever it is that they're looking for. And then once the user manually interacts with the portal here by clicking or tapping on the notification bar at the bottom, then it expands and you can run all the marketing campaigns that you want to put in front of your customers. So maybe enter your email to get 15% off offer, maybe a refer a friend offer, maybe something around just educating your customers. Maybe you want to put your latest marketing video in there, maybe like a contest or a giveaway. All those campaigns that you need to have in place as a marketer, you can put in there that are seen only when the user is ready to interact with it, instead of just throwing it in their face right away, which, as we know, isn't a good user experience. Now, those of you that some of you guys may be here because you've kind of known about this all along, and you've been really hesitant to put campaigns on your mobile site because you maybe you're a little ahead of the curve and you intuitively knew that you didn't want to annoy the crap out of all your visitors. This is a way that you can start introducing this stuff on mobile without having to worry about annoying people. So really, from whichever side you're coming from, it's definitely a solution you should be considering. You don't have to go with AddShoppers to do it. Obviously, I'm biased, and I'm not going to say that we're not the best solution. But if you just keep the basics, the same, the principles are the same across any platform. No immediate pop-ups. Let the user find what they're looking for, without you're having to close anything. And you can push offers to the site, but don't make it an intrusive experience. So why this works, I pretty much kind of covered this, I hope, as we were looking at the example here, but it works for a couple of reasons. Basically, it's all about user experience and not annoying people. So the user has control over when if they want to see a promotion, then they're opting to see it by clicking or tapping on it. It's not immediate. The other thing that you'll see here in some of these examples is personalized. So you can build personalization into it, which is, again, another buzzword that most marketers have on their radar. How do we provide a highly personalized experience? Because that's what our customers demand. So that's built into something like the portal. At least our platform. I can't speak to others, but it's something important that provides a better experience, essentially. And then obviously, lastly, basically talked about this, but it's non-intrusive and Google-friendly, so you shouldn't have to worry about is this going to be targeted now, or even is this going to be targeted down the line if Google starts to really crack down even more, because they've really taken a step, and we're still waiting to see how far down the line they're going to go with targeting things like pop-ups. So you also may have noticed this same thing popping up around the web with retailers, brands that have become a little more savvier and a little ahead of the curve. So here's one example. You'll see it on desktop. So sites like Victoria's Secret started testing out things like this a couple months ago. So similar kind of offer with little panels down at the bottom that you can click or tap on to expand and look at offers. And we even noticed this in our Uber a couple weeks ago. So if you pull out your phone, not now because I know you're paying attention to me, but later, after the webinar, if you pull out your phone and pull up the Uber app, you should see something like this. So again, pretty much the same user experience that you see. And again, this is an app that millions of people use every day. So user experience has to be good. So yeah, you'll see this kind of popping up now around the web from some of the sites that are more on the cutting edge. So that's pretty much it as far as the solution goes. Again, just to summarize, don't throw pop-ups in people's faces. It's okay to run promotions. You don't have to give all that stuff up, but really be careful about how you do it and how you present it to the user. So anything you can do to push an offer to the site without making it take over the entire view or the entire experience is going to be the key here. And with that said, one thing that everybody who joins will get, again, in your inbox is our mobile algorithm impact analysis. So basically, it's taking exactly what we looked at today with some of the examples, and is giving you much more examples. I think there's about 20 of them. Of what sites saw drops, and then what it was that caused the drop in rankings, and also a lot of thoughts, again, going even deeper into the solutions and best practices, so you can really stay on top of this as the year continues, because nobody knows exactly what Google's up to, but I wouldn't be surprised if they roll this out to desktops as well, or something like that, maybe later in the year or even next year. So again, look forward to that. That'll be arriving in your inbox shortly. And one other thing to offer everybody on the webinar, we started offering a joint Google Analytics review from both AddShoppers and Blue Acorn. So if you would like 2 sets of highly specialized, highly trained analytical eyes to basically pore over and peruse your Google Analytics data and find what are some of the biggest opportunities for optimization and improvement, that is available to you as an option. So you can hit yes if you're interested, or you don't have to fill it out if you don't want to. I'll give you a couple seconds to fill that out, think about it, and then we'll move on. Q&A is coming up next, so if you have any questions, you can also drop the questions in the Q&A box so that we can get to them here after we are done with this. I still see a couple more coming in now, so I'll wait for about a little longer, and then I'll close this poll out and we'll jump into Q&A. All right. Still see, every time I want to close the poll, I see a vote come in, so I'll keep it open as long as you guys are voting or answering. All right. I think that's everybody. We'll go ahead and close that out. And now, over to Q&A. Again, I am pulling up the questions here. We'll get into these. And again, as we go through, any questions, please let me know so that we can jump into these. Elliot and I will both be handling these questions, just depending on whoever wants to jump in, or we'll both jump in. While I'm letting, I see some questions coming in. So while I see those coming in, I'll just handle a couple of the follow-up things here. So again, if you joined late, you'll be getting the recording tomorrow. So don't worry about that. Again, here's my information on the left of the screen. Send me an email if you have any questions. Check out AddShoppers.com if you want to learn more about what we do and how we can help. Elliot's information is over on the right, so any questions for him about anything he presented on or Blue Acorn, please email him, or obviously the site is blueacorn.com if you just want to check them out and see how they might be able to help. And with that, I'll go ahead and jump into our first question here. So let's see. All right, first question here. I think this is one we could probably both speak to. Elliot, I'll let you take it first, if you don't mind. But the question is, how often do you need to be updating your site and marketing tactics?
So I think both of those are probably tied hand in hand. So it's going to be a little bit of an overdone answer. But basically, if you're doing anything with marketing that drives traffic to your site, you'll want to be doing this kind of like as a holistic approach. So let's say you're pushing paid traffic to your site and you see people aren't converting at the rate that you want. At that point, it's probably a good indicator that you'll want to do some maybe optimization testing of some kind, being able to track and see if different things that you do can improve the way that people are converting or clicking through further, or even dropping items into a cart for e-commerce as an example. As that is a different approach. Sometimes it could just be a difference in maybe the personas that you're targeting for the marketing tactics aren't ideal. So again, that's tied back to kind of a holistic approach. You might just need to find the right persona to be going after as well. I mean, I can speak from personal experience that marketing tactics, probably they're just going to be throwing stuff against the wall. And once you see things that stick, you kind of replicate it and evolve it and adapt it. But the best way to do that is just constantly experimenting.
Cool. Yeah, a couple things I can add to that. So one, I mean, obviously, this is kind of a broad question, so it does depend on your industry in general for one, and just how you kind of do things in general. So, if you're a site that runs flash sales every week or something like that, then obviously you need to update that stuff every week. Or even if maybe you're not there yet, but you learn that your industry is very that urgency is very important for in your industry. You may want to update your marketing tactics constantly, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, so that there's always an offer that's kind of out there but is going away soon to get people to take action. So I think the first piece is really learning about your audience and how they buy. Whereas maybe you're a high-end furniture site and people take months to make a decision. Switching up your marketing tactics every week may or may not be a good thing. Obviously, marketing you always want to test first, but you may just annoy people who are like, well, I came last week and it was this price, and then next week it was a different price, so I don't even know what the price is going to be, so I'm going to start considering other options. So I think the longer answer would be learn about your audience first and your brand, and then kind of build your marketing cadence around that, if that makes sense. Hopefully. All right, jumping into question number 2. How is mobile versus desktop traffic typically split across the network? Is mobile traffic continuing to trend upward? So that's a good question, and I'll just answer that real quick because obviously we run a lot of data with that. You can jump in if you want, Elliot, but basically what we've seen is the answer is yes. Mobile traffic is continuing to trend upward in general. So yeah, that's basically a good question.
Yeah, that's actually a simple simple answer. We actually see some similar things as well because we do full aggregate analysis across probably like 30 different clients. And typically we do see more people surfing as far as web, although I've recently heard that people are doing less shopping or browsing on mobile and then buying online. Apparently that trend is going more towards just people shopping and buying online. So we'll see how that looks.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to keep watching as buying online or buying on the mobile device becomes easier. Then I think we'll see in 3 or 4 years, I think we'll see mobile conversion rates shooting up, especially as more and more people probably don't even have a desktop anymore. So that'll be interesting to watch, but right now we're still kind of in a weird area. All right, anyway, next question from Cody. Thanks for the question, Cody. In this example, do we really want to assume that whole 50% would not give us their email through another method? Is there a safe estimate we can give to say that a certain percentage of that 50% would give us their email through a similar means that the other 50% of emails did? That's a mouthful. I'm glad I got through it okay. But this is a good question, and this is referring back to the example where I showed like how to calculate the amount of email captures that might be at risk. So obviously, the question is, do we want to assume that the whole 50% would not give us their email? Assume is always a tough word to use without testing. So I mean, the short answer I think is always test first. But basically, if we figure out that 50% of emails come through mobile pop-ups, let's just place that as a given and say we ran the test and we figured that out. So how do we know that that 50% wouldn't give us their email another way? So there's a couple of different things you could do here. I think, just kind of running off the top of my head. Number one would be how many of those people end up buying, because obviously you get their email address when they buy. Although that also introduces the question of what if they wouldn't have bought without entering their email to get whatever the offer was. So I think really the best thing to do here is obviously you want to figure out how many of those emails are coming from like a mobile pop-up or something like that. And then figure out where the rest of your emails come from. So is it something where you could introduce that whatever that offer is some other way. So something like the portal obviously is a solution, or maybe you could have an extra step after someone adds a product to their cart or something. Just trigger a pop-up that way, because those are safe for now. So it's really a tough question to answer. I don't think that there's really a good way to do it without just testing it out, or tracking how many emails come from which source. But that's my thoughts on that one. Email me if you want to go more in depth with that. But Elliot, do you have any other thoughts on that? Now that I kind of first step.
No, I think that was solid. Testing is always the best option as far as trying to drive home actual numbers and percentages and stats.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll let you take the next one here, since I kind of took that one. So, question is: Are chat dialog windows that open up in mobile considered an intrusive interstitial? From Richard. Thank you, Richard.
Sure. So I can't be totally positive on this, so I'm going to actually have to go back and sort of refer to my report, which you guys will have that emailed out to you hopefully in the next day or so once my editor goes through it, because he probably noticed a spelling error on that screen cap. Sorry about that. But the short answer is not likely. So one of some of the major themes that we saw was that mobile pop-ups were based off of like size and load. Yes, usually chat prompts usually appear on load or after a slight delay, but I don't believe I saw any declines that specifically use that. Unfortunately, there was only like 1 or 2 sites that we actually put into our analysis that I saw that used a mobile chat system too. So I don't want to give you a definitive yes or no that it could be affected. I would just say it's probably less likely.
To add to that, I would basically, I don't know exactly what kind of a chat dialog window you have. I'm assuming you have one, and that's why you're asking. But basically, I would ask 2 questions. Number one, does it pop up on load like automatically without the user having to do anything? And question number 2 would be, once it pops up automatically, assuming it does it cover up the majority of the screen, or is it just one of those little tabs that shows up like in the bottom of the screen? Because if it's just one of those little tabs, that's like chat us or something like that says on it, then you should be fine. But if it does take over the majority of the screen, then it might be something that could be penalized. Okay, so next question from Susanna. Hope I got your name right, and thanks for the question. So it seems like sites that load pop-ups immediately saw penalties. I'll let you take this one, Elliot.
Sure. So I would not say definitively that any site that uses a pop-up on load would get penalized. Again, we basically have preliminary data, so it's a little bit rough as far as like who gets it. However, that does appear to be one of the common factors for sites that did get negatively impacted, that their pop-up was not only large, but it appeared on load. So if you look back at some of the solutions that Peter went into, if you actually create or click on something to cause an action and then the pop-up appears, if it's like some sort of promotion or anything like that, then in theory you should be fine. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, can a pop-up interfere with someone consuming the content that they're intending to get to? And if that's occurring, eventually that will likely be the target of a penalization.
Cool. Yeah, and that's exactly what, if you go back and read their original blog post on the Google Webmasters blog, that's basically what they say. If it's intrusive, if it pops up immediately and it covers up whatever the user is trying to see, that's what they're targeting. So yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. Last two questions. The next one, I'm going to let you answer this, Elliot, because it's kind of a good Blue Acorn question. But how important is site design in relation to ranking?
Sure. So site design has a lot to do with it, not just mobile, but obviously desktop. Desktop probably more so now than ever, considering that the site search index has everything to do with that and more or less nothing to do with desktop any longer. With that said, obviously anything where you can help people get through a proper funnel that will do well with your conversions and all of your other important KPIs like revenue and sales. But as far as the actual ranking, there's actually a lot of contributions that go into it. So anything from site speed, which your site design could impact. If you're using high-res images, which would slow the load time, that will impact it. That's part of site design. Obviously, if you're using now mobile pop-ups, which block people from getting to content, that can that can impact it as well. One thing that I probably forgot to mention or didn't highlight enough was during the mobile pop-ups, one of the other themes that we saw were sometimes you'll see like a layer of transparency that's like sits in between the actual pop-up and the content. It makes it even more difficult to read. That was definitely a contributing factor that we saw as far as like some of the negative analysis. But just to reiterate, site design absolutely has a direct relation to site rank, but more so it's about like the site speed and how it's impacted based on like how heavy your site load time is.
All right, cool. Last question. I'll just probably go ahead and answer this one. Will the algorithm eventually affect abandonment pop-ups, etc.? I mean, the short answer, nobody knows. Longer answer, it appears, now that Google's introduced a slight penalty for intrusive interstitials, which is essentially entry pop-ups in more common terminology. It opens the door to other types of pop-ups being penalized. So, the short answer right now, you're fine. Will it affect abandonment pop-ups in the future? Maybe, but nobody really knows for sure. But it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that as well. So, I mean, the reality is if it prevents someone from actually closing and exiting out, yeah, I would say without a doubt, if they're not already penalizing those kind of sites, usually it's some sort of like actual prompt that appears, not really an interstitial. But if it doesn't affect it, I can't necessarily say that I would foresee that being an issue, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And that's pretty much it. So those are all the questions, unless someone wants to put in a last-minute one in the next like 30 seconds or so. So again, thanks everybody for joining. You will get the recording and also the report that we mentioned sometime early to afternoon tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, again for joining, and hope to see you on the next webinar. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.